Today, I want to talk about the most important hidden goal that Hogwarts Legacy needs to accomplish, why I care a lot about it, and why you should too. Before we start, a little warning. This video is slightly less scripted than the other one I uploaded a couple of days ago, and I know that while some of you might prefer it that way, others might not. In all honesty, I just feel like talking about the game and sharing my thoughts on why it could, and very well should, be an amazing success. Now, we all love games. That love is the very reason why I'm sitting here organizing my thoughts on the best way that I can share it with you. But the more I think about it, the more I realize that, to me at least, this is not just a game. In the same way that the Harry Potter movies are not just movies, and the books are not just words on paper. When this game was announced in 2020, the geeky child within my heart held his breath, as I was surmounted by a feeling of nostalgia that, to this day, no other fantasy setting has managed to trigger in the same way. I have come to realize that the wizarding world has been a huge part of my childhood. When the books first came out, I was around the same age as Harry. And yes, I am aware that makes me terribly old. But that also made me deeply attached to Hogwarts and everything it stands for. I vividly remember myself as a kid waiting with anticipation a whole year to read the next book, anxious to follow the adventures of my favorite characters as they grew alongside me. Even for $1 million, I wouldn't be able to tell you the amount of time I spent imagining myself attending Hogwarts, proud to wear my Ravenclaw robes as I went to classes or snuck through the castle at night on the way to the secret passageway that leads into Honeyduke's cellar. Thinking about it now makes me feel a little silly actually, but every time I watched any of the gameplay previews, the first thing that popped into my head was not hoping for an amazing combat system, or a profoundly deep storyline, or again, hundreds of different cosmetics to wear. My first thought has always been, I hope they make Hogwarts feel like Hogwarts. Perhaps they were only doing their job very well when promoting the game, but during the showcases, the guys at Avalanche seemed to understand the respect and care the wizarding world deserves. At the very least, they managed to convince me that their game is built around what matters the most, and that is to allow players to experience a living, breathing world in which we will be able to finally put ourselves at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Many of us know the deeds of Harry Potter by heart, and the vast majority of the games we got to play so far have been rather underwhelming, to be honest. Not only because they were pretty average products, which is objectively true, some more than others, but mostly because they forced us to be Harry himself. We only ever got to live his adventures, no matter how much we've always dreamed to experience our own. Hogwarts Legacy, however, is set in a completely different timeline, one where the boy who lived is not even born yet. That fact alone opens the wizarding world to amazing new avenues, enabling us, the players, to enjoy Hogwarts the way we've always wanted to. Now, don't get me wrong, I am fully aware that a single-player offline game comes with its own limitations. We'll have the main storyline to follow, of course, but once we have exhausted all possible crossroads and maniacally explored every square foot of the map, we will have to wait for new content to be released to quench our thirst. And even when it does, it is still going to be a small sip, especially in comparison with how huge the base game seems to be. On the other hand, online games are never-ending by design, since they revolve around repeatable content and online interaction between the player base, which means you could very easily invest hundreds of hours without ever running out of things to do. However, a finite experience is not always a bad thing, especially when we consider how the gaming industry has approached online games in recent years. Opinions may vary on the matter, but I would rather experience a game without the burdens of subscription fees or cash shops filled with things much cooler than anything I will ever be able to obtain within the actual game. Whenever we take into account how huge of an impact that model of monetization had on many online games, it is always wise to be worried that it might end up on every new title that is announced, whether it is online or not. Thankfully, Warner Bros. Does not seem inclined to go along that route, at least for Hogwarts Legacy, and I can live with occasional cosmetic items being added to the cash shop. Regardless of these details, however, the most important aspect for people like myself is that feeling of mystery and wonder that completely takes over me when I see things like this. I know it might sound ridiculous, but looking at the feathers of that hippogriff being tossed around by the wind reminds me exactly why I always enjoyed playing video games. That brief moment of escape that makes real-life troubles appear distant and unimportant. How much the open world manages to feel exciting, diversified, and full of life is going to be key in making the difference between a huge, long-lasting success and a big disappointment. Many studios fail to realize that it takes a lot more than just being able to touch the leaves on the tallest trees, or to reach the peak of the steepest mountains, despite how pleasing they are to look at. What really matters is the reason that makes us want to go to those places, to make them mean something other than just well-made textures. It goes without saying that expecting every lump of grass to have a purpose on a map as big as Hogwarts Legacy would just be unreasonable, but the risk with open worlds of this size is always how empty and pointless they might end up feeling. In this case, the long-awaited immersion into the wizarding world might just be wasted in massive landscapes that have little to no meaning, other than just being arenas for the occasional encounter with randomly generated enemies. Looking at the bright side, the mini-map we have seen is literally filled with icons, which makes me rather hopeful that there will be a lot of stuff to do while we travel around. Both outside and within the castle we have seen plenty of NPCs that will contribute in making the world feel alive, as well as many interactable objects within the scenery, such as chairs and tables that you'll be able to sit upon. These might sound like minor things, and they are, but everything helps when it comes to building a world that is believable instead of just being something that is pretty. Anyways, we have reached the end of this rant, but before I go, I have a question for you. What do you think the open world is going to be like? Have you always been a massive Harry Potter fan like me and share my incredible level of nostalgia? Let me know in the comments below. If you're interested in the video I mentioned at the beginning of this one, you'll see a link to it right now. And if you feel like I earned it, consider subscribing to the channel. It would really make a world of difference. As always, thank you so much for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.